was we replaced all the vintage Pinsetters that were in here. So this was a 16-lane bowling center when it opened in '57. And 1 through 16 was the original side. And they had Otis Elevator A2s from 1957. And then I really wish I was alive back then, but in 1960, bowling was so hot in the area, they decided that they were going to add on 8 more lanes. And this was a leased property through the Triangle Development Company. And the Triangle Development Company said, we're only going to move that wall one time for you. So they said at that time, okay, if you're going to only move that wall one time for us, because that wall was right here, we're going to do 16 more. So they decided to do 32 at that time. And when they
probably a smart move.
It was a smart move at that time. They did not regret that, but they thought that they could kind of do it in stages, like things are good, we're going to add on 8 more, or maybe 3 or 4 more years we're going to add on 8 more. So they did the upgrade in 60, and added on 60 more lanes, and those were like the first series of Brunswick A Pinsetters. And then in 1962, Brunswick was going around the country updating their fleet of Pinsetters to the A2s, meaning they were converting them to a different cushion. The ball came back like a rocket. They ran the machine as fast and as hard as they could run it, actually.
So at one point, there were 2 different Pinsetters in this building?
Visually, they looked pretty much the same, but there were little things where certain parts, yes, only went on one side of the house, and certain parts went on the other side of the house. The first series of A2 Pinsetters, or A Pinsetters, were running on 230 volt. Then in 1960, they decided 208 volt was more better. So we had different voltage motors back there too. And the mechanic that worked here, he started in 1957. His name was Bob Adams. And he worked up until Triangle closed in 2002 season. And then when we decided to reopen the place in 2004, he was well into his 70s, maybe 80 at that time. And he came back. And it was like an angel being brought to us, basically, because he knew every machine, what he adjusted, when it broke in 1970, how he fixed it. And so some of his repairs were only known to him of how to repair it. And he worked here until he was 90-something, and he got cancer, and he really worked here until about 2 weeks before he died.
Wow.
And that was about 7-8 years ago. And he was a legend, and he really kept the place running back there. And he didn't work full time, like he would come in 3 or 4 hours a day. If something major broke, then yeah, he was here, hands on, and walking us through it. He wasn't the one necessarily climbing up on top of the machine still, but he could really talk. He can really yell at us from down on the ground. When we decided to pull the trigger and do this, I went back and forth several times whether this was a good idea or not. But when it came down to it, we're a fairly busy 32-lane center now. And we've grown this way through our customer service, what we can offer leagues, and I'm not saying we've eliminated all the competition, but the competition is gone for this county, unfortunately. And that really dwindled bowler numbers, but this place was able to kind of capitalize on that a little bit. So being the only game in town does help a little bit, but would I rather see another bowling center in the area? I think so, yes, because that would ultimately bring more bowlers back into the community. But we are, again, a fairly busy 32-lane center when it boils down to it. And we need 32 lanes to run 4 nights a week because we're that full at 6:30. And running A2s, it's always when I got home, it's like, oh God, what's going to happen? Yeah, this side was over 65 years old. and God bless them, they ran that long, and Brunswick openly acknowledged when they sold us these that these will never run like an A2 as far as longevity, but when you do a price comparison too, of what an A Pinsetter cost in 1957, there were still price tags on the machines. They're about $8,400. When you do that price conversion, that's about $80-some thousand a machine back then. And that's what these proprietors were willing to pay to eliminate pinboys, because across the street at Fox Bowl, which was Cannonball back then, there was 12 lanes then, and they had pinboys still, and that was always the thing.
So what's in here now? What kind of machines?
These are Brunswick's newest generation free fall pinsetters. They're called the GS-NXT. I know GS means game setter. I don't know what NXT means other than it's just a continuation on their series. So there was GS-92s, 96, 98s, and then GSX is what most of us see when we go to nationals or at the Reno Bowling Stand. Is GSX, and this is their next step beyond GSX. And there's some improvements to the machine as far as how they run and how fast they can actually set pins. So there's a lot faster strike cycles. First and second balls, now the machine is able to, if you knock down no pins, it's able to just go straight back up. The strike cycle, for example, on lane 15, you watch that, as soon as it detects no pins, that sweeps pulling back immediately, so I can get the next set of pins up there as fast as I possibly can.
When you say free fall, I think of EMF machines.
Correct. I would say they operate very similar, especially with the sweep. The table looks similar when it's setting pins, but over at the Highlander Bowl, which I worked at for many years prior to coming here, we had AMF 8270s over there. So I would say there was a lot of carryover between an 8270 and what these machines represent, but they're a lot faster, they're a lot smarter. The 360 controller, which is a computer box, which I can go back there and happy to show you. It's like a godsend to all mechanics. You can diagnose any switch, you can diagnose any motor, you can control so many different variables, where on an 8270 you couldn't control that many variables, and you're chasing problems where on this thing you can go back and just go to the computer and say, I want to see if it sees the 10-pin switch and touch it.
So going back to A2s, the biggest difference is obviously its age, the way it sets pins. It can do other things too, like can it set single pins for you?
It can set single pins. That's another interactive feature. So when we first decided to pull the trigger on the machines, Brunswick kind of came out and said, well, let's talk about your scoring system. And we had Vector in here before. And to be honest with you, we thought it made it up with the A2 correctly. Other than the 10th frame strike cycle, it got rid of that, and you had to wait for the rake to do first ball, second ball for an A2 on the 10th frame. So the new machines, that's obviously gone now, and no more hitting sweeps and stuff like that on the 10th frame where open play bowlers often did, because they weren't looking at the scoreboard. But they sold us on the fact that with Sync, which is Brunswick's newest scoring system, and it's pretty prevalent here in the Northwest. I know Milwaukee Bowl's got it, Hazeldel's got it, Park Lanes in Hillsborough has it. Is that the feature matches up with the Pinsetter well, where now we can control one of the interactive games that's really popular around here is called My Shot. And with My Shot, you can enter the scoring mode, and you can come and say, gosh, I missed 3 10 pins last night. I'm going to set up 10 pins in a row, and it'll measure your speed on that, it'll measure how many times you picked it, it does all kinds of measurements on how good you are on that. Now if you want to practice that 4 times, 10 times, 20 times in a row, you can do as many times as you want. We also had some kids coming in here setting up some stuff because they want to have fun with it. So there was one kid in the other day setting up the 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 over and over and over and over. I was like, why are you doing that? I've never seen this pick before. I want to try to pick it.
It's what went behind trying to make sure you kept those masking units the way they are.
It was an important thing. When we remodeled in 2007, so the bowling center opened up with our ownership in 2005. So by 2007, we had finally had 2 years under our belt. We finally had made a couple bucks, and we were able to finally get a loan from a bank that would allow us to remove the AS80 scoring that was in here. And it was black and white television, and they were big monitors up there, and people can go back in the time machine. They can remember the red scanner, so it would flip back and forth and scan the pins. And, okay, so yes, with the massing units. So when we did that remodel in 2007, we put up Frameworks massing units, and when we did that, we were just trying to change the look of the place. We were trying to make the place look not dated. We were still in competition with 2 other centers within 3 miles of us. So we were trying to be the most up-to-date center, and instead of trying to like, oh, they still got black and white scoring, oh, they still got this look from 1960 in there. So it was an aesthetic thing that we did, and I'm still glad we did it. We covered up those crowns, and we did it in a fashion that we could mount the other Frameworks massing units far enough in front that those could actually swing open, because those are like a car hood almost. They pop up, and so you can work on the front of an A2 real easy. And everybody's, all bowling providers have experienced this with Frameworks massing units. Over time, the colors fade. UV lights from up above cause that image to fade. Like all the colors, the reds start fading away to, it holds blues well, but all the other colors were getting washed out. So it came to the point where we needed a new graphic. And I got a bid from Brunswick on new graphics, and we really liked the Frameworks graphics where they had the A2 logos and they had the old Brunswick logos going across the house. It's more like a black and white type motif. But then COVID happened. And when COVID happened and we were locked up, I really needed something to do. So I decided that it was best to take down those old massing units that were washed out, and we'll give this a try again. So I painted up the diamonds in between, matched the gutter color, and up above our massing units we had the old lettering system, like $5.99 special for breakfast and King of the Hill winners and stuff like that. That was kind of cool though too, but you know, that take us getting the ladder out every time and getting all the letters, and these letters were from 1960 and the tabs had broken off the back of them, and it was kind of a headache. But you know, that was kind of cool that you were able to change your advertising real quick on that. But I wanted a classier look, so we put up this wood up above the massing units, painted them. I was able to light the crowns in a better way now with LED lighting that's out, where before that crown was lit with was called a GE47 bulb, and you touch that, like it put a hot circle in your hand. It was that hot. And when they run that hot, you can tell what it would do to plastic over 50 years. So those crowns are kind of brittle, I would describe them. So I de-brittled them, gave them a little more reinforcement, and lit them up with new LED lights that run much cooler, and you know, cleaned up the lattice between it, and then repainted some of the diamond whites in there. I call it the 60-foot rule. It really good, looks good from 60 feet. If you get up and close and you eyeball it, you're like, but you know, most people are at least 60 feet away.
Yeah, so no one's going up there.
Nobody's going up real close and looking at my fine-tooth microscope. So it came out really good. And when we decided to do A2s, the Brunswick crew came in and said, this is a problem. These massing units aren't going to work. I said, this is on the new ones. Okay. And I said, well, this is a problem you guys need to solve, because I'm not going back to Frameworks massing units. I know what happens after 5 years. The image fades. And back in 1980s, if you follow Debbie Dean, she shows all these pictures of Timberlane's Hollywood Bowl and of 20th Century and Amato's. They all had this look. And unfortunately, they're all gone except for 20th Century, which became Kingpins, but those massing units were long gone before those two guys bought the place. And we were like the last ones left, and we were covering them. So it became this really cool thing where we can uncover it again after being hidden for 12 years. And people will be like, oh, now I remember Triangle Bowl. I remember that look. It's a nostalgic feeling. It represents bowling well. And everybody just loves the crowns. I love them too. I'm just walking in that door every day and I see those lit up. It's like, that's bowling, and I love it. People are really happy we kept them, that we didn't switch them, and it required some Brunswick engineering where they actually flew out an install engineer to figure out how to do this correctly. So we were kind of their playbook on that, on how if other bowling centers, for example, wanted to marry up an NXT to a Star Shield or whatever that was cool and nostalgia that somebody might have in a basement, that they could do it again.